Hello and welcome to another edition of the GEB America podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Gunn, and I have with me today a double feature treat. I have my wife, Dr. Rebecca Gunn, with me in the studio here. We're right next to each other, and a special treat here. And then we have our guest today who has the same last name as us. And we're trying to figure out the connection of family, but we have author, speaker, podcast host, Robin Jones Gunn with us, and we're so glad to have you on the podcast, Robin.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the speakers and not necessarily those of GEB America, Oral Roberts University, or their employees. This program is not intended to offer investment, financial, medical, legal, or any other advice. Viewers should consult a subject matter professional regarding any such matters.
Well, thank you. I was looking forward to this because you may tell the listeners that we met quite a few years ago and have seen each other a couple times, and yes, as Stephen said, we're sure we're related somehow down the line. We just haven't figured it out yet. That's right.
You know, this journey has definitely been one for me. I grew up. Since meeting my wife and us talking and dating and throughout things, I always heard about this author, Robin Jones Gunn. And so we had the treat of meeting back in 2014. It's been longer than I thought it had. And so it's been such a treat to see that journey start there and also going with that. And now it'll come full circle, and we'll get into this more, but come full circle of conversations of our daughter, pulling into the mix of that learning and growing and Christ-like hunger for reading. And I just think it's so neat, and that's such a special thing. So we're excited. So would you like to start us off with the first question?
I'll let you go first.
You want me to start off? Okay, cool.
It might be the only question you get to ask.
Okay, that's true. This is the first one. That's right. I like that. So, I know, with a little bit I know and research a little bit here, is that your journey has been, of authorship, has been very intertwined and connected with family experiences. And so share a little bit, just kind of some pivotal moments of how the journey started, of even being an author. And I know that's a special story right there, but from there, and then maybe fast forward to how we got from there to here.
Well, I really didn't grow up thinking I would be a writer. I wasn't one of those girls who in second grade started writing stories, but I was always telling stories. And I did write a few things here and there. And it wasn't until after my husband Ross and I had been married almost 5 years, and he said, "You have to go to a class or a conference or something and develop this gift for writing." And he signed me up and paid for me to go to a weekend writers conference. I was so mad because I thought I am going to be so embarrassed, but I came home saying, "You were right. I met my people and I want to do this." And I wrote a devotion that was published in the Upper Room magazine, little devotional, and they paid me $10, and I realized I am a published author. So I just started writing more articles, and I did interviews and devotions. And then when our kids were little, I wrote children's books. There were 14 of those that were all published, which was kind of amazing back in the day. But then it was a real turning point on a camping trip. My husband was a youth pastor, and we'd taken all the kids on a week-long trip to the beach in Southern California, and all these girls were in the tent reading all week long. And I went in the tent and said, "Come on, there's surf and sand and boys and just outside there." And they said, "Well, we'd rather just stay in here and read about surf and sand and boys." So I read the books with them, and they were only 13. I was just so concerned because I didn't agree with the messages that they were putting in their young hearts, and I just said, "Does your mother know this is what you're reading?" And they said, "We just go to the library and check out whatever we want." And so they challenged me and said, "If you don't want us reading these books, then give us something else to read." And I tried to find books that were right for their age group, that had all the elements they wanted. Couldn't find any. They then challenged me again and said, "Why don't you write for us?" And I took it seriously that this was something we could do together. So every week I would read a chapter to the girls in my Sunday school class, and they tell me everything I did wrong and everything that had to be changed. And I keep rewriting. And the first Christy Miller book was rejected 10 times by publishers. Wow. They all said, we just don't see a market for books like this. And I wanted to say, well, go look in the tent, look in your daughter's bedroom, look at what she's reading. And it was Focus on the Family magazine, or publishers that had just started publishing, and they picked up the first Christy Miller book. And within 3 weeks, we had the first letter from a reader who said, when I was reading in the book where Christy realized she'd never given her life to the Lord, I realized I haven't either, and I prayed right along with her, and I gave my heart to Jesus. Wow. And that was the first letter, and I've received hundreds, maybe thousands of notes like that over the years, so that the books then we knew needed to continue. We needed to keep writing these wholesome role model stories that could get into the hands and the hearts of these young girls. And God has blessed the Christy Miller books. They've been translated in other languages. And so, and that's how Rebecca and I connected through those characters.
That is. I found my first Christy Miller book, I think I was in 7th grade. I found it wandering in the library, and the rest is history. And
now our daughter's in 7th grade.
7th grade me would be like really geeking out right now that I'm getting to talk to you. But I'm so thankful that it finally got accepted by that next publisher, and for all those girls and the tent telling you to keep going after it. And now you have, what book number is this one? Do you know how many? I know I'm putting you on the spot. I'm like, I don't even.
I think it's 106.
That is amazing. That is so amazing. Oh, so amazing. I know one of the things that I really appreciated, and starting with the Christy Miller books and then going on through the Sierra Jensen and then the college years and just going on through all of them, is that I was always around that same age group of the characters that you were writing about. And now I'm these ages. I'm having this one. Right. But it's so fun just to kind of reconnect with your writing style, and even the little Easter eggs that you put in there with characters from other series. And I know that this book has especially significant meaning for you because it takes place in Africa. And I know that holds a really important and special place for you in your heart. Do you want to share a little bit about why you chose to write about Africa with the Tea with Elephants?
Well, it had long been in my heart to go to Africa, because when I was growing up and I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, I thought the most wonderful thing would be if I could be a missionary and go to some remote place in the world and tell people about God's love. And so Africa, of course, was the place to go. And I applied to go and serve with this mission organization. The only opening that they had in Kenya was to be a laundry supervisor. And I was turned down. I didn't have the necessary talent. When you're 21 years old and you can't even go wash clothes for Jesus in Africa, I don't have any gifts or any special abilities here. And how can I serve the Lord? And then I realized over the years of spending more time with teaching Sunday school and being around young girls and telling them stories and teaching the Bible to them, that was really what I was gifted and called to do. And so then it flowed naturally into telling stories in books and writing more and more books. And years later, I was invited to teach at a conference in England. I mean, when you write enough books, people think you know what you're doing. Please come to England and teach us how to write books. And at lunch, I met a young woman sitting at the table. After everyone else left, she said, I wanted to tell you that I grew up reading your books, and because of them, I want to go into publishing books. And her name tag was Wambura. And I said, where are you from? And she said, Nairobi, Africa, Kenya. Mm-hmm. And I said, when I was your age, I thought I was going to go to Africa and be a laundry supervisor. She said, why? And I told her my story. I just thought that was the best way I could serve God. And she said to me, you did not need to come to Africa to wash our laundry. You sent your stories, and God used them to wash our hearts. And that's what I knew. That's what I was made to do. Years after that, she and I remained friends, and I was invited to speak at another conference in Africa, in Kenya. And Wambura invited me to come stay with her. We had such a great time. She took me to a hotel up in the treetops on Mount Kenya, and there's a big watering hole, and at 4:00 you can go to the very top of this treetop hotel, and they come and serve you with silver tea service in teacups, and you look down, and we sat there, she and I, we put scarves on and threw them around our necks and had tea with elephants. And when we were talking, she said, you remember that title, you're going to want to make a book about that someday. And I was really privileged to go to Kenya a second time. And that time, Wambura and some of our other friends, we all went on a safari. So that's why Tea with Elephants had to become a book someday. And it now is. Just came out 2 months ago. And yeah, I poured into it my deep affection for Kenya and wrote about characters who were realizing that they had to get away from their schedule and their routines at home to really see what God was doing in their lives. Because I find that often happens when you travel. You get out of the routine and God just shows you new things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, as an author, I mean, like you said, you've learned over the years to write a few books, over 100 books there. So what have you found from a writing style in terms of how you approach the process of writing? Has that been something that, is it more of a spontaneity thing? Do you have like a theme of you want to go down this road with this character or this subject line, the title even, and then you try to develop that? Or is it more, have you been, just curious, kind of what does that look like for you?
Well, I'm very character driven because I want to tell their stories and I want to get to know them. So my process over the years has been the same. And it started with the very first trying to come up with the character Todd in the Christy Miller series. I was going through surfer magazines and I saw this picture of this blonde surfer boy with these bright, screaming silver blue eyes, and cut him out and put him on a piece of paper. And I looked at him and said, "Hi, my name's Robin. What's your name?" And he said, Todd Spencer. Oh, okay, write that down. Just, your imagination kicks in. And then I always come up with just 3 things. What's your name? Tell me something unique about you. And he said, oh, I'm allergic to bee stings. I go, oh, okay, that'll come in later. And then I said, and what's your problem? Because you can't have fiction unless you have friction. So every character, I want to know what's going on. And he said, well, my parents are divorced and I'm not sure which one I'm going to live with. I'm like, okay. So then I knew, and then I put him in a binder, and then I developed all the other characters, found pictures of them, and I still do that. So it's kind of like paper dolls, or I'm very visual, so I put it all together. And then the very first thing I do before I start writing is I sit down and take a pen to paper and I write out a prayer. And I dedicate myself to the Lord and I ask him, please, may I have another story?
Yes.
And just pray for the readers every time. I just write out a prayer that the story, there'd be something specific that would get to the person who needs to hear that, and that it would draw them closer to the Lord. That's always my prayer, that my stories would draw the reader closer to the heart of God. So, and then I just start writing. I kind of know sometimes what, I know the location and I know the characters, but I don't always know how it's going to end or what's going to happen. Yeah. Drives my editors crazy sometimes, but you can rewrite. I do rewrite a lot.
Tell us more. I'm just working on it. I'm still in process. Give me a little bit here. That's great. No, I know that a lot of your early ones were set in Hawaii. I guess because you lived there for a bit.
Well, that was book number 5 of the Christy Miller series.
Well, see, there you go. This is where this starts. So there's
Rebecca knows.
I was like, technically, it takes place in Southern California because that's where I was from when I found the book, and so I thought it was really interesting too, just because she had moved to California, and then I moved away from California, and that was right around the time of the Sierra Jensen and the moving. Anyway, we're going down that road for a minute. I wanted to go back to the Tea with Elephants for a minute. Because I just, aside from bringing in different aspects and things from other series, that's always fun to read about. And I'm not going to say what they are so that your readers can find out what those are. But I just really appreciated about just the gift of friendship that you bring in with the 2 main characters, and just seeing what that friendship, the ebbing and the flowing of just their friendship from when they were teens to now adults, and kind of how that shifts over time, and then also just the realities of love and of life, really, that take place during the story. And I really, I always love reading. And it was really neat hearing about how you named Todd from the Christy Miller series, and then looking at one of your characters' names here comes, or you kind of refer to the word, I believe it's Fernweh. Am I saying that correct? Is that I'm really curious how you, I had never heard that word before until I read it in this, and I loved the definition. But tell me, I'm really curious if you can remember when you heard it, or how it resonated with you, because I was like, wow, this is such a really neat word. And how does she know these words? How does she find these things out? So feel free to share a little bit about that.
It was good old social media. I was following a friend, and that I had known for a long time but hadn't connected with her, and clicked on her profile, and she said faith, family, and Fernweh. And I thought, who's Fernweh? So I had to look it up, and Fernweh is the longing to travel to faraway places. And I thought, oh, that's me. I love that, and I love that was part, knowing her. Yep, that's part of her whole life. So I thought, and see, that's the thing about writing too. It's like you're always running around with a butterfly net, just catching these butterflies and putting them in your collection, so that someday these little words or pieces or characters. And I thought about, after I was saying how Todd, I did cut out a picture of Todd, as I said, that is true. But what's also true is that I originally named him Ron, and the girls in the youth group said, oh, no. His name's Todd. When they saw the picture, they were like, no, they knew. So, yep. Again, rewrite. There's always creative writing. There's always changes.
That is great. So now, your books, how many series have you done? I know and Rebecca may have known the answer to this, but how many different series has there been throughout this?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, him off in my head right now.
Well, okay, I'll just say it this way. The Christy Miller collection has the high school years, the college years, the marriage years, the baby years. Then there's the Haven Maker series about Christy and Sierra when they're a little bit older, in their 30s, and late 20s and 30s. And then the Glenbrook series, which the first Glenbrook book was made into a Hallmark movie. Well, very loosely based on the book. But then there's the Sister Chick series, and now I'm doing the Suitcase Sister series, the Father Christmas series, and those were made into 3 Hallmark movies.
Yeah.
And was anyone keeping count? I don't know how many that is.
That's okay. I just was curious, because I just think that's unique to be able to do the series like that. I think that was my point. It was more or less
And there were a few other ones too, because I think they're was it the Cottage by the Sea? Is that what series is that?
Yes.
And then the one,
the Hideaway series, and
yeah. See, there's
Sierra Jensen series, Katie Weldon series.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't want to say goodbye to my imaginary friends, I guess.
Well, but I love that, because I think there's something to be said about bringing that into, like you said, a collection, but then the collection encompasses a certain number of, the journey along the way, and different parts and pieces of that. And I think how often we look at our lives and go, you know what, there is if we're the the name of us as our collection, but yet where there's different seasons that we walk through different parts and different times of how we approach things. We learn lessons. We have different collections of friendships that God brings into our lives. And like you said, don't want to let go, but maybe they're not quite as much in our lives. And so I think that's something special about that. And I love, not that I've read the books myself. I love
Come on,
just
Stephen.
the lessons.
I know. I'm going to have to get on them over here.
They're in audiobook. You could listen.
I know. I need
I
to.
have like all of them at home.
Yeah. Well, and I love that. And
I really do. I think
I really do. And actually, we as a family, we sit down a lot of times. She'll be like, "We're gonna have girls' time. We're gonna watch Hallmark movie," and I'm like, "I want to watch with you guys." So I'll end up being with them.
Maybe I'll just have to have you watch the one that Robin did.
So, which segues to our next question. My next question, at least, was what was the process like of those books becoming movies, and how, what was the takeaways from that process?
I love telling this story because it's just a God story all the way through. And I actually wrote a very little book. It's an ebook. It's 100 pages long, called "How My Book Became a Movie." So you can go to Amazon and get "How My Book Became," and it just kind of, in 100 pages, tells the story. Because the short version is that after I wrote Finding Father Christmas, which was a contract from a publisher, would you write a Christmas novella? Sure, how fun. Came quickly, was not a romance, just a sweet story. Publisher was happy with it and said, would you write another one? I said, sure. And I just couldn't quite get there with the second one. I was using the same characters, continuing the story. So I wrote it and thought, okay, not quite the same feel, because they wanted it to be a little more of a romance. Turned it in. The publisher said, this isn't what we wanted. You need to rewrite. So I did and turned it in. And then after the second time, my editor, it was a new editor, I hadn't worked with her before, and she said, wow, this is worse than the second rewrite. Could you start over? And she gave me all the things that they really wanted it to really be a romance. Just a really sweet Christmas romance. And I kept thinking, well, the first one wasn't. So I rewrote it a third time, turned it in, and she said, we just can't use this. We need you to do it again, the fourth time. And I went to my agent and said, I think someone just discovered that I have no idea what I'm doing. The Wizard of Oz moment, pulling back the curtain. Pay no attention to the woman behind the typewriter. And my editor said, well, pray about it. Sleep on it, and in the morning, if you want to just cancel the contract, we can do that. But just ask Jesus what he wants you to do. And the next morning, it was clear that I was to keep my commitment, finish the project, be humble, learn how to write to what the editor wanted. And I finished it the fourth time, turned it in, and they said, okay, this will work. And I thought, I don't want to ever see that book again. I don't want to think about it. That was just the most difficult thing. And a few years later, a producer reached out to my agent and said, do you have any Christmas books? And she said, oh, yes, Finding Father Christmas by Robin. And I'll send it to you. And the producer came back and said, well, we can't use it because it's really not a romance. And this is going to be for Hallmark, so it has to be a romance. And my agent said, oh, we just happen to have a second book that is a very saturated love story. Sent that book to her, and they said, yes, we can take the two books and put them together. And it was such a beautiful thing that the Lord taught me through that, of just do the work, be faithful, because you don't know what he's going to do down the road. So when it was probably, I think we counted up like 12 to 13 years from when I wrote the first book to when the first movie was made. So it's a long journey. Yeah. And my agent and I were invited to go on set. It's filmed in Vancouver, Canada. And we got to be extras in one of the scenes and sit in the back of the theater. And then it did so well. It was the Hallmark's most watched, highest rated for that year. I think it was 2016. And so then they wanted to do another one. And because they have a screenwriter who does all the writing, I just give them the permission. it's like a one-time, here's your small payment, but grateful, done. You get to do whatever you want with it. So then the screenwriter came up with a second one and then a third one. And Janet and I were able to go on set for all three of them and be extras in all three of them. And we developed such sweet friendships with the directors, the producers, the actors. I still keep in contact and text back and forth to the three main actors, which is such a gift. So it was a bigger picture. I guess I just want listeners to kind of look at what it is they're struggling with right now, and they think, I don't have to do this. You're not the boss of me, or just that natural thing that wells up in us, and just pull back and say, okay, Lord, what do you want? You see the whole picture. I don't know what you're doing, but I want to be in line with your plan, because he'll surprise you. He always does.
It's always more amazing than what you could even initially imagine.
Yep.
No, I think back to, how your journey started too, with not even sure if you were going to be writing books, and suddenly you are writing books. And then even like how you wanted to do work in Africa and wanting to get there, but then weren't able to. But now you have been there, and your stories have reached even farther than that initial thought of wanting to serve God in Africa. And then just all of the different things that you've done over your life, and just how it's always ended up because you've given it to God, and how he's directed you and made your dreams even so much more larger and more amazing than you could even imagine. So I guess a question that I would have too would just be for the listeners and your readers, and just really anyone who might be thinking about wanting to do something or have a dream, what your recommendations would be to, especially with your story with Africa, and it wasn't time yet for you to be there, but then being able to step back and then let God take over and see those dreams become even more than you had thought or imagined. So if you just want to touch a little bit on that.
Yeah, it's always surrender. It just is. It's that his kingdom would come, not my kingdom.
Yeah.
So maybe he puts those dreams and stirs those desires in our hearts, and equips us to do certain things, or to have certain interests, and yet it's always surrendering it to him so that it will be accomplished in his way and in his time. We're so impatient, but his time is perfect. We know, but we forget when we're in the middle of it. A quick example of that is that, I think first I should say, if you are on the path that God has you on for something that he's accomplishing in your life, there will be opposition. There always will. There will be resistance. I mean, you're about to do damage to the kingdom of darkness, and the enemy will come against you, period. So you just know that when, everything's going wrong or it's all falling apart, okay, that's normal. That's just take hope in the Lord, be strong and courageous, and get back at it. Don't give up, because we had an opportunity, my husband and I, to go to Brazil. The Christy Miller books have been translated into Portuguese, and they're in Brazil. And the publisher, after they'd been publishing the books for about 10 years, they invited Ross and I to go to Brazil and speak at schools and churches and bookshops and 4 different cities. It was a big trip. And just days before we were to leave, I had a root canal that just blew up, and I was in the hospital, and my blood pressure was crazy, and my face was like this. And the morning we were supposed to get on the plane, I went to the endodontist, and he was checking it out to see if the antibiotics were working. And I thought he was going to say, you are too volatile, don't get on a plane. But he said, my wife's from Brazil. I love Brazil. You have to go. Here, just keep taking your meds and put ice on your face and go. And I got on, we hadn't even packed yet. And the plane was leaving at like 11:30. And we just ran home and put stuff in a suitcase for this 3-week trip to Brazil. And we got out at baggage claim, and Ross said, "Who are we supposed to meet?" And I said, I have no idea. Just look for somebody who recognizes us. And someone who didn't speak English waved at us. We followed him and got in his car. I don't know. And
What's the right person?
it was the best trip. It was the best. It was so fruitful. So now that was about 16 years ago. And there are women in Brazil who have given their life to the Lord after reading these books, and they are now writers, and they are writing the books for the next generation. And I have connected with them, and a publisher in Brazil reached out recently and said, "Did you know that there is such an interest in novels for young women from these brand new writers that they had these writers on national television? And when they got on television, every single one of them said that it was because of your Christy Miller books that they came to know the Lord and wanted to be a writer on national television."
Wow.
And like, I just want to say that to those who have a dream and there's opposition. Your face blows up. You think you shouldn't get on the plane. Get on the plane.
That's right.
Just, be available and surrender. And I will often think how this saying we often say that, and then God showed up. But he's the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning, and he's already there. I really think we show up. We make ourselves available, even in the obstacles, and then we wait and see what the Lord will do, because it'll be a surprise.
That's right. That's so good. That is so
It'll
good.
be amazing.
That's right. It'll be amazing. I think that is something I have kind of learned, and it's a phrase that has helped me recently, and it's just take the next best step.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what do I need to do? What's the next thing? What's the best next thing I can do? But what's that part? I'll just do that. And then, okay, I got that part done. Now what's next? He's like, go to the airport. Okay, what now? Well, get on the airplane. Where we go now? Baggage claim. Okay, what now? Look for somebody. I don't know. If they know us, do they not know us? The car, we can get in the car. Which car we're going? I don't know. We just go where they go. You take it, like what's that next best thing? And so I think that those who are dreaming and they're thinking about what God's put in their heart, and there's some big dreams. There's some big dreams that Rebecca and I have, for our family and for us that we need to do. And so we're just trying to do the same thing. We're like, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next step we can do towards that? And this is the whole concept there. Your story just inspired that and kind of made that come, I think, full circle and painted a really good picture. So if you're out there, you're watching, you're listening, you're hearing this, take the next step. Take the next step. Get on the plane, right? If you're, I think back, it reminds me of our trip to Greece. Rebecca was 20-something weeks pregnant, and she basically was saying, I want to go to Greece. So how can I make this happen? Essentially, like, are we safe or we're good? And doctor's like, yeah, you're fine. You're good. But it was like to get to go see a place that, maybe she dreamed of, or, dreamed of seeing the Parthenon and all the different places we got to go and walk around. Now, we were helping, carrying things, carrying kids, walking around, make sure she wasn't carrying the kids while walking around Greece in the summertime. Well, was it summertime?
It was a Thanksgiving trip.
But it was warmer. It was warmer too. So that's good. All right. Well, I think we're going to phase into our fun little rapid fire. But before we do, I want to pause and give you a chance. How can folks get connected with you? How can they find out about your books, find out about all your podcasts? You're a podcast host yourself. And I've gotten a chance to see some of those. You're really, really good and natural at that. Like you said, storytelling comes very natural and comes on the other side of that too. So tell people about how they can find out information about you.
My website is easy. It's robingunn.com, ROBINGUNN.com. And that will give you all the links to things like my online shop, where there are a lot of free downloads, a list of all the books I've written, free discussion questions for books and things like that. And then also social media links. I mostly hang out on Instagram and Facebook. But this Women Worth Knowing podcast was a surprise. We moved to Southern California 4 years ago. 4 years ago this week. Whoa. That went fast. And when I got here, a friend called me and said that there was someone I needed to meet. she connected me to Cheryl Broderson. And I thought we had met at some point because I grew up in the same area in Southern California, as did Cheryl. And Cheryl's father, Chuck Smith, founded Calvary Chapels in Costa Mesa. Okay, so we know we were in the same concerts at the same time, or the same Calvary Chapel Bible studies the same nights, but we just never met. So when we connected, she said she was doing a podcast about women worth knowing, because she wanted to just tell stories of the women that are kind of unknown, but God's done amazing things in their lives. Mm-hmm. So she first invited me to be a guest on the podcast, and she had another co-host with her at that time who was moving to another state. And when we finished the interview, she said, "Would you be my new co-host?" And it was just, it was a dream I didn't even know I had. Like, ooh, tell stories about women worth knowing. So we have over 250 episodes now. Wow. Sometimes we have guests that come in studio or call in, or we talk about women in history. I have learned so much about women that a lot of them you can't even find a book or anything about them. Their stories are sort of hidden. But, have they grown my faith? The ways that they trusted God. It's like, yeah, I want to be strong and courageous and learn to trust God in big ways too. So yes, Women Worth Knowing. It's on any podcast platform that you can find.
That's great.
It's a great podcast. I'll put a little blip out for it. I definitely recommend it. It's makes driving, like, I'll just pop it in while I'm driving. Yeah. You learn so much. And, you and Cheryl are just such great hosts with it, and asking great questions and learning all sorts of different things. It is really inspiring, and it grows your faith. So put a little plug for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. And I think if I remember right, that episode, Rebecca mentioned it to me, the first one you were actually the guest on, you shared, it was a longer episode. You actually shared really more of your full story. And so if anybody wants to go to that for I think it was like, a couple hours, something like that?
Well, I think yours was split into two parts.
Well, originally, when it was just a podcast, we could just talk as long as we wanted. Yeah. But then it was picked up by, I think now, 6 radio stations. So we have to be 26 minutes and 40 seconds.
Right, right.
So a lot of the episodes, you'll see it's part 2 or, part 3. But we just want to get we don't want to chop it too short. We want to tell the whole story.
I love it.
I love that. We're actually just kind of in the process of getting that. I mean, we've been doing audio version, on all the platforms, and then we got picked up or partnered with Pray.com as of middle of the year, and it's been growing and really great responses and audience from that, which has been awesome. Shout out to our Pray.com audience if you're listening on that. Let me know, give me a comment. But we're also in the process of looking at the first of the year of a TV formatted show. So we're actually going to take back some of the ones we've got. We have something 50, 60 episodes, I think now, taking some of those and making those into actual 28, 30 style TV. So I understand what you're saying. There's certain time frame, bounded, you have to keep it within the time frame, but at the same time, still getting the message across. And so I'm sure we'll probably do that as well. There'll probably be a few part 1, part 2s of some of my longer. I don't know why. I'm typically longer. I have a lot of conversations, great comeback, interactions that come longer. So looking forward to seeing those. But rapid fire. Let's do this. So here's what it is. These are just, and Rebecca is a co-host, random questions. Anything random pops in your head, you can ask it. So I'll start it off. What is your favorite food?
Well, it just depends,
One of your favorite foods. How about that? One of your favorite foods.
Because we're recording this right after Thanksgiving, and I got a lot of pumpkin pie, and that was pretty much my favorite food for 3 days in a row.
Good choice.
Maybe Easter it'll be different.
That's true.
All right. Sunrise or sunset?
Oh, sunrise.
Very nice. Let's see here. And you've gotten to write about traveling. What's your favorite place you've gotten to travel?
I love Hawaii, but we live there. But I still love to visit any part of Hawaii. And, I just finished writing another Suitcase Sister book, and I can announce the destination now, and it's Italy. And so I would say Venice. I've been there twice, and it was pretty wonderful. So I wrote about Venice in the new book, so it's still kind of fresh on my mind.
Great.
Do we know when the new book's coming out? Sorry.
Yes, we do. Right now, August 2025, and it's called Gelato at the Villa.
I'm putting it on my calendar.
That's right.
I got the day off. I'm reading.
So Rebecca Gunn and we got to go to Venice, and so that'll mean a lot to.
See, I mean, that's one of those cities that that gets in you. You never forget.
Right. Here's one of my questions, because you have been to a lot of places, but what is one place you haven't been to yet that is on your bucket list of travel?
Correct question.
I have been to Scotland, but just to Glasgow and Edinburgh. But I would love. I mean, Gunn, come on. You guys have been to the north of Scotland. I haven't been to the Highlands.
We need to go check it out.
I know. I'd like to go there.
All right, I got another question for you. And I guess this plays in a little bit, but is there any non-fictional people of stories you wish you could tell, write about them?
Well, there are quite a few, because I've been discovering them through the Women Worth Knowing podcast. But I'm fascinated with the women who were the early missionaries to Hawaii. And one of them I haven't written about or talked about, Sybil Bingham, was just a remarkable woman. These New England women, hardy, get to the tropical islands and have to do everything from scratch. And they thrived. How do you do that? I want to know.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Any other ones?
What is your favorite pizza topping?
Ooh, I love it.
Favorite pizza topping would be mushrooms.
Okay.
But, ask me next week.
Okay, I'll do a secondary on that one. Pineapple or no pineapple?
On your pizza?
Well, if there was this one place in Maui that they did it right. Anywhere on the mainland, probably not.
Right. Okay, which place? Which were you referring to?
Oh boy, I don't know if I
remember it.
Oh,
Maui Madness.
Pizza Madness and
Yeah,
Maui Madness.
that's
Yep.
Grace's favorite.
You
place.
remembered it? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
We always have to stop.
That's our famous. I love that. Well, that will probably wrap it up for us today. But Robin, I want to say thank you so much for joining us for the podcast. Thank you to my co-host, my lovely wife, Rebecca Gunn, for joining me. And thank you for following us. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed this, please make sure you like, share, follow, comment, tell your friends about it, and turn the notifications on so you don't miss any of our future podcast episodes coming. And we will see you next time on the GEB America podcast. Have a great, great day.